a some issue with the PowerPoint. When I downloaded it, um, I got a message that there was some content that needed to be repaired or omitted or something. So unfortunately, I don't have the text that you provided for this, and I'm going to have to ask that you just give that to me as a Word document or something. And I'm not going to count off or anything like that for it not working, but just for time reasons, I'm going to have to go ahead and critique without it. So without let's see if what our feedback is on this is anywhere near being in line with what your intent was. Okay, so I already see some things in this one that I really like. Um, First of all, it's just a lovely symmetrical, nearly symmetrical organic shape. Um, the interesting composition. It's not perfect. I think that it's the kind of thing that it could be just a little bit moved one way or the other, but it's pretty close. And I've really liked the focal point. The thing that is so interesting about this is that you've got the shadows, and not only do you have shadows hitting the surface, you have translucent leaves that are letting shadows come through. This is one of the things that's really fun about photography is, when you really start paying attention to what light does. And of course, I really like this color scheme. This is what we would call an analogous color scheme because it's dominated by um, colors that are kind of next door neighbors on the color wheel. Yellow is one of our primary colors. Green is a secondary color, which is a mixture of yellow and blue. So, when you put green and yellow together, they're considered analogous, because you have to have yellow to make green. And so I really like the restriction in color that, all the other colors have been kind of omitted or excluded. Okay. Let's see. This one, I don't think the composition is working for you quite as well as the first one. I see where you're going with it. It just doesn't have that dramatic flair that super close up, of the single flower did. Perhaps maybe going and trying to isolate one of the clusters of flowers here. Maybe one of the clusters of flowers up along the top so that you could include a little background as well. It's super blown out up in here. It looks to me like you probably did go in and do some editing, but you might have pushed a little bit too far. I'm not completely sure. It seems like maybe the yellows are pushed just a bit much, and that's one of those things that just kind of comes with practice, comes with time. But yeah, it's just the colors are just a little bit uncomfortably unnatural, and I think just bringing a little bit of blue back in with whatever hue adjustment you were using, you might have just pushed it a little too far to the green side. Okay, this one very nice. Okay, so I think that just already in looking at the first three, I believe that the strength is really zeroing in on something up close. And when you exclude that much of the environment around it, it becomes very mysterious. It becomes almost like another world. This is really nice. It looks like you had just super shallow depth of field. Probably you would be able to, with with one of your brush tools, bring out a little bit of detail in the flowers here. They are a little bit flat. It's hard to get a good exposure when you have delicate little white flowers like that, and it's got to compete with really dark areas over here. And so for the most part, I think you did really well. Just this is this little delicate sprinkling of flowers amongst all this green in various shades and in various levels of focus. Really nice. And I like the kind of the silhouette. This one is silhouetted against this dark area, and it makes some really interesting negative space. And the super shallow depth of field means that we can really focus on the focal point and not get distracted by a busy background. Okay, and so another kind of close up, playing with the shadows, both passing through and cast onto the leaves of the plant. I think the background looks a little bit blown out. I think that maybe the I can tell you've been doing some editing. And I think that maybe again the background seems a little bit too yellow. It might be that you could bring just a little bit of blue back in there. And here's a little trick that I'll tell you. We're going to talk about color coming up on another assignment real soon, but it's called the push-pull theory. And what it means is that warm colors like orange and yellow and red, they tend to push forward on the picture plane, meaning they tend to make things pop out. Whereas cool colors like blues and the bluer leaning sides of the greens and violets, they tend to recede. They tend to push way back into the background. And so one thing you can do sort of sometimes, because I think the yellows in those leaves are a little bit vibrant, and competing a little bit much with the red, oranges, and the flowers. Mask out the flower and kind of cool down your tones a little bit in the background. There's even some filters that you can use, that'll put like a little shade of a little preset filter that'll bring some blues in, and then that might allow you to even introduce a little bit more of the yellows just in the flower. I think that the flower doesn't need to be quite that much in the center. I think that you could probably afford to say, take this edge of the frame and bring it right about to here, and then see a little bit more of the nice open negative space that's happening over here, because this is very dramatic right here, this kind of diagonal stretch. I'd like to see this have a little bit more room to reach out, but it looks really nice. Oh, nice. Yeah, so I enjoy just looking at all of these together. One seems to prepare my eyes for the next one. It seems like you were, very careful about what colors you kept, or just didn't keep, but looked for, I suppose. It's a very restricted palette. Here we would say that this is more of what we would call a complementary color scheme, because red and green are opposite of each other. And so that just automatically creates a lot of contrast. Very dramatic, with the curving lines happening here. This is all kind of pointing to something, and so it's almost like I could do with a little bit less of the background. I could probably see having this curving piece over just a little bit farther, or just stepping back a little bit, just so that this stuff can bring my eye. It would be great if there was something right here, because it's kind of pointing me like, oh, where, what's going on right there? And then there's just, this empty sidewalk kind of thing. But I mean, for the most part, it's another just really nice composition. Background is blown out, and yeah, I can see where you did some editing along in here, and you do need to be careful with that. If you don't get your um, when you use the refine edge on your selection tool, um, it can leave some kind of weird looking stuff on the edges if you go a bit far. And there are some devices, there are some tricks, for getting that effect. It's not necessarily easy to do, but I appreciate that you are. Getting in there and trying with the editing software. Um, I think for a lot of you, you just need to your eyes just need to sensitize to um, really learning the elements and the principles of design, and how to make them work for you. And you get the the software to do what you want it to, and not the other way around. So, okay, I think this is our last one. Yeah. Yeah, so this one, very, very interesting. Again, this stuff happening up in here to me is way more interesting than the background. Background looks a little weird again. And it could be that you're doing this intentionally, and that's fine. Kind of doing it for dramatic purposes. But I think when we're starting out, it's best to kind of try to avoid extremes like that. And introduce those extremes after you've learned the subtleties. And this is another example of the subtleties are really what makes this picture, not the extremes. And I think that I could even stand to not have any of this background at all. I think that I could stand to just have you focus in and just let this bush fill up the entire frame like you did in some of the others. Because the thing that I really like about this is there's a almost playful kind of dancing quality with the curves on the leaves. Um, there's there's just something about the way that the curves are on the edges of the leaves and the way the light's hitting them, that just there seems like there's a lot of movement, and it just seems to be very light, kind of dancing movement. That's how I see it. So this one, I think on all of these you have gotten off to a great start. I don't think that that any of them are completely ready to like say print and hang or anything like that, but you're close. And I think it's just kind of a matter of getting a little bit more confident with that editing software. But you really are learning what to look for, and you're right in seeing the interest in the way the light passes through the leaves and casts these interesting shadows and all of this. So I think your best ones are definitely the ones where you're focusing on something up close. So I would encourage more. Okay, so we can't read your conclusion, but thank you, and nice work.